retirement and remedies with the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. Let's take a look at, as we close out this chapter, we've covered a lot of details. Anytime you're involved in human resources and the administration of employment law, one of the big things is you have to have a department that can do the details well. It's one thing to run the department and do all the negotiating and other aspects of it, but you depend a lot on details. And some of the aspects, just a word of caution, always make certain you have good people that you can depend on. That's a big deal. Technology can and will let you down. If you have good people that know their topic, a lot of times they'll step up to the plate when things go tough and actually be a great assistance for you. So pay attention to the different aspects of it. Age and employment. Employers should evaluate the two requirements at any position, and then when you're hiring, make certain you're testing for those kind of positions. Sometimes you want to sit down and look at people that are the most qualified and make certain that your qualification isn't based upon age, just what's the best fit and what is it that they bring to the table each and every single time. The problem with RIFs, a reduction in force, is that people don't maintain good analysis of performance. There should be an annual performance evaluation at least. It should be that. I've had people come in and no, it wasn't a RIF, it was a matter of probationary employee, and of a year, an annual year of 365 days, I've had at least 3 or more supervisors come to me wanting to terminate their employee the next day, and first time I listened and I thought, okay, I need something's wrong here. And I pulled the personnel file out, and here they had never once evaluated the employee. I said, nope, I'm not going to do it. You cannot terminate this employee. You need to do an evaluation. So they do an evaluation that day, even though the contract clearly says one on the 5th month, one on the 11th month, and a final one on the 12th month. They hadn't done any of that work. And if I had approved their termination of that employee, I could have sat them down there and been in breach of the contract because that person was never evaluated. So pay attention. Supervisors, they're busy putting out the fires that is in their world, and you have to sit down if you're going to be in charge of employment law. Your goal is to try to reduce different opportunities to sit there and be challenged in court or other legal forums, or just having disgruntled people because supervisors forget to do the details. Managers should always evaluate employees, and here's the danger. Typically, if you use a Likert scale, Likert is really, it deals with the 5-point scale, which is probably the most scientific one of all. So using a 5-point or a 10-point scale is always the best way of doing evaluations. Almost everybody is just as bad as college professors and high school teachers. Everybody ends up with a B. I don't want to give them an A. They're not that good. But I don't want to give them a C. Oh, they're not average. They're good. Everybody's good. Yes, it is like that. So managers and supervisors, nobody wants to say, you know what? You haven't done a very good job. I'm going to keep it up. I'm going to fire you. I'm going to give you a D here, a D here, and a D here, and maybe a C here, but over here. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody likes to be liked. That's a problem. So people avoid evaluations. I had somebody wanting to fire somebody, and I says, okay, let's look at the personnel file, and all of a sudden they get a little antsy. I said, let's take a look. Oh, you did an evaluation. Oh, it was 3 years ago. You gave this person all 5s on a 5-point scale. You really liked it. Well, they've really slipped since then. I can't tell. Now, if I'm in court and I have a jury sitting in front of me, and that says, well, you approved the termination of this employee, I says, what evidence do we have to sit down and say, well, you have my word. I said, oh, that's good. How come your word's not on paper? And we had this whole dialogue. Now, just to be clear, it wasn't one supervisor. It wasn't 2 supervisors. It is often the majority of supervisors, unless they are on top of their game and doing it, and HR is reminding them, and then finally getting ugly to the point saying, you do this, or a letter goes in your personnel file, do your evaluations. It really becomes difficult, but the problem is the B curve is always difficult. A reduction in force should always have very clear rules, processes, and everything should be exactly as it's said. No exceptions. Don't go out of the line to sit down and say, well, you get it, but that person doesn't. I'm going to keep you, even though your valuation, it's okay. But this person, they got all these things, but I can work around that. No, make certain it's uniform. All termination decisions need to ensure a fair procedure and it's balanced across the workforce. If you have a reduction act, make certain that if we're going to reduce everybody by 10%, well, make certain that's really true. Or one department, we're going to sit down and keep marketing up over here because we need to sell more product over here, manufacturing. But all the accountants and all this, be clear what's going to happen and then do what you say you're going to do. A lot of refs, they're prone to problems in salary economics. I've seen people want to remove an entire layer of management, and that's cute. And if you turn around 3 years later, you'll see a lot of those management positions, their supervisor had now supervised all the employees that they supervised as well as the ones they had. And all of a sudden now you'll see 3 years later, you go back and a lot of data shows that when you have a RIF, in management especially, the people that are left, they go back and they rehire the positions with a different title to make certain that, and you'll have that kind of gaming going on. So be careful what you're doing. Be careful on terminating an older worker and replacing them with another worker who's over 40 that still doesn't protect you from a charge of age discriminations. Train managers to consider accommodations to age. A lot of times, your older employees tend to be highly productive, which is how they survive a long time on that job. If they're not, it should be reflected in their evaluation process. So make certain you go and take a look, especially if you're new to a job, you look at recruiting literature, remove any age-based classifications. I don't know anybody who follows that practice of actually including age there, but if you come across that, make sure it's gone. Don't terminate a worker on the basis of age. If you want to pull something like that, keep your mouth shut and don't tell anybody. Okay. Review the waiver of discrimination to ensure compliance. If you have an early retirement plan, ensure age-related aspects and comments are treated the same as any other discrimination. You're better off. No, it's not as fierce as enforcement as Title VII is, except for the fact any lawsuit is not something that you want to deal with. And make sure you're sensitive about medical exams. I don't know any cause for medical exams involved except for the fact that some type of mental acuity issues. I've had to do a couple of those, but the reality is for the most part, unless you have some kind of bona fide occupational qualification issue, you always sit down and focus in as to what the work performance is. Pay attention on the economic reasons about pay cuts, especially if it's offered, if they offer to sit down and do something less. Remember, retaliation is probably the biggest problem that you have to deal with. To summarize things, employees are protected against discrimination. These victims of discrimination, they can have a wide variety of different options for them, and they have to prove, though, 40 years of age, that they suffered adverse employment decision, they're qualified, and replaced by somebody younger. Make certain, if you're the employer, you're paying attention to these 4 causes of action because of the fact you don't want to have that be branded on you because of the fact there's a high probability you're going to lose the case if they can all 4 be proven. An age requirement is a bona fide occupational qualification. You know, that's interesting. It's pretty rare that is true, okay, but it does exist. So make certain if you're pursuing that as an employer that you're paying attention to that. And if you're laying somebody off, make certain it's always a different factor than on age. The employee is not qualified for the position. The decision to leave was because of a voluntary retirement plan. That's always the best way to do it. And the same act of defense can be used in courts. Once the employer presents their defense, the employee has the opportunity to prove this defense is a mere pretext based upon the gross decision. So pay attention what you have out there. Look at benefit plans that evade the ADEA or the older worker benefit program. So look at that aspect of it, see where that's at, make certain you apply with ERISA, that you have private benefit plans, and that governs the welfare and retirement plans provision, and that if you have any kind of technical aspects of it, you have formal legal review. A RIF occurs when a company is forced to downscale operations with a reduction in workforce. That's a big deal. And pay attention to how you're going to deal with people that are laid off. Are you going to call them back? Are you going to try to replace them with other people? If you do, you may have a problem. So pay attention as to how you're handling that aspect of it. Performance appraisals, they shouldn't be optional. If you have a multi-site employment area, make certain that the person of each site follows through and does their jobs, because if you are involved with the RIF eventually, RIFs are often challenged, can be suspect in the process. So make certain if somebody retires that if you can, make certain you're leaving on a positive note. There's always remedies that people have with ADEA, but you never want to get involved in that unless you really have to. And sometimes if it's difficult, then you have to step forward and do the hard work. But with that being said, sometimes you can sit down there and have a positive separation if you do your due diligence in the process and talk about early retirement or other programs. Make certain that the employees, when they walk out the door, that they don't have reason to point back with how they were treated poorly. Because keep in mind, when we talk about why do employees sue employers, 67% of the time, 2/3 of the time, it deals with how they were treated on the way out the door. In the meantime, take care.